We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Tuesday, April 28th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today to represent the Gen Z once again is Chuyoung.
Good to be here.
To have you on the Cheska's with us today.
Happy Tuesday, everyone!
Happy Tuesday!
Woo-hoo!
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're now into the second day of the work week, and it's a perfect moment to slow things down just a bit. So a few days ago, on April 23rd, we marked World Book Day, a global celebration of books, authors, and the joy of reading. It's a reminder of how stories can connect us, whether it's through a novel, an essay, or even something short and easy to pick up on a busy day. So I'm curious, Cheska, when do you usually find yourself reaching for a book?
I mean, what I call myself an opener, not a reader, because there's this great quote about books that say, don't read, open. So 읽지 말고 펼쳐라. So what I read very frequently. I even carry a book with me all the time. And for me, reading isn't an act of like a very long sedentary activity. You can read a page or two or quotes. But there are very specific occasions when I desperately sort of like reach and search for a book. And that is when I feel extremely stuck.
Some books are easier to open than others, I have to say.
They are very easy to
There's some
open.
intimidating books out there.
Oh, there are very many, but I open the ones that make me sort of like feel better. And these are moments when I sort of feel stuck, alone, or even like really sad and feel alone in this vast universe. Because I think words are sort of the best communicators. And one of the wonderful things about book is any problem that you have, how weird, how crazy, or even how deep, every person or any person in the world has thought about it and written it. And I think words have such power to soothe and warm and inspire us. So whenever I have a question, I go for a book first. Yeah.
Does this mean you tend to go for more like self-help books or like more philosophical books?
Yeah, definitely more philosophical, psychological, even business books, because I think life is operated like a business. So anything that can help me get through, I'm more open.
I guess also help you learn and grow as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is very impressive. So what about you, June?
Well, what Cheska said really hit me. Just open first. But for me, I used to open social media more than instead of opening a book.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah, that's good to know. But yeah, so I think that's why social media is very addictive. It's easy to open. And when I think about it, reading isn't actually that hard. It's just hard to start. Once you open a book, it's easy to keep going. So whenever I catch myself doom scrolling, going down the rabbit hole with short form content like shorts or reels and feel like I'm just wasting time, I try to pick up a book instead these days, kind of like turning a bad habit into a better one. Yeah, and I also used to put books on a pedestal because I felt like I had to read something cool or intellectual or impressive. So reading used to feel like work. But these days I see reading as just any other hobby, like playing games or watching movies. And that's why I find myself reaching for books a lot more lately.
And that's really important, the idea that reading isn't difficult, it's just about getting started. And once you remove that pressure to read something serious or intellectual or even cool, it becomes a lot more approachable, almost like choosing any other form of entertainment. And that's why we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, reading has made a strong comeback, with certain titles going viral online and building massive fan followings. And among these trending reads, Korean literature has been standing out in a big way. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at the key developments shaping Korea's literary scene and how Seoul is embracing this renewed reading boom through its own unique initiatives and events. So just as we saw in a video, Korean literature is not only gaining popularity, but also expanding its reach across borders and cultures. And building on that global momentum, let's take a closer look at what's driving this surge in attention. So what key trends are shaping Korean literature today, Jessica?
So on top of K-food, K-pop, K-beauty, Now it's K-Lit, K-Books. So we all know the Nobel Prize winner Hangang. So her new book, We Do Not Part, has won the National Book Critics Circle Award this March. And this is the very first time that a Korean translated book has won this honor. So congratulations to Hangang once again. And also, author Chun Sun-lan's book, 1,000 Blues, is now being adopted into a film by Warner Bros. Pictures. And to get our viewers a little bit more excited, I want to share the storyline. The story is about a humanoid jockey, so a horse rider, and a race horse that is being put to death, and is set in the future of 2035. It is a story about time and speed and how technology catches up and slows us down. So it's a great way to sort of get into it. But I think all of this goes to show that Korean translated books with both quality has now increased in global sales and global attention. So to see the actual growth in sales, let's take a look at the screen. So, according to the Literature Translated Institute of Korea, between 2020 and 2024, a total of 942 books were translated in about 40 languages. Now, as you can see from the graph, the cumulative sales rose by over 37% over the years, which have now reached about 2.6 million sales in volume. And I think that's really impressive if you think about it, because Koreans are only used in Korea. So the fact that a Korean book that is translated has reached this much volume in sales, I think is really the sign of us going global.
And I can also attest to this because I get my recommendations, it's pretty basic, but I get my recommendations from Amazon or Goodreads. I religiously check the rankings. And I have noticed over recent years, a lot of translated Korean novels are up high in those rankings.
Oh, that's so impressive.
Which has inspired me to read those books as well. So you definitely see that surge.
Wow.
So these milestones really highlight how our Korean literature is really reaching new heights on the global stage. And that growing recognition is also broadening the scope of what we actually define as Korean literature. So how is the scope of Korean literature evolving, Jian?
Yes, so one of the most noticeable changes we're seeing is that the boundaries of Korean literature is expanding beyond Korea itself. English books, which have Korea as its background, like Pachinko by Min Jin Lee or If You Leave Me by Crystal Hana Kim, have gotten great reviews abroad, even though the authors didn't grow up in Korea. And it's really interesting to see how writers who didn't grow up in Korea reinterpret the country through their own cultural roots and memories. I think it offers a fascinating, fresh perspective. And on April 15th, a Korean literature event was held in LA where Korean authors and international readers could meet in person. Apparently, the authors attended to talk about how love and understanding can break through language barriers. I think it's pretty impressive how very Korean stories like that dealt with Korean history, Korean society, and Korean family memory are now connecting with readers all across the globe.
Right, and just to add on to that, like there's also books about, there's a book called Crying H Mart that also did really well.
Yes,
that's about like a
that
Korean American author, like she's a singer, but like she talks about her experience as a Korean American, so you can really see the scope expanding. And it's really interesting to see how Korean literature is no longer defined by geography, but instead reimagined through diverse voices and experiences. And to gain an in-depth perspective on this, we're going to speak with the author of If You Leave Me and The Stone Home. And that conversation is coming up right after a break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts. And cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
And joining us today is Crystal Hana Kim, the author of If You Leave Me and The Stone Home. Her debut was named the best book of 2018 by multiple outlets, and she was a National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. The Stone Home was also a finalist for the Maya Angelou Book Award. So hello, Crystal. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on today. So Crystal, could you briefly introduce yourself and also your work?
Yeah, so I'm a Korean American novelist, and I wrote a novel. My first novel was called If You Leave Me. It was published in 2018, and it's a love triangle and a motherhood story, but it's set against the Korean War. And I really wanted to write about the Korean War because, as a Korean American living here, I wanted to understand my history, right? I wanted to understand, like, how did my family get from there to here, and what are the world kind of events that impacted us. And then my second novel, The Stone Home, was published in 2024. And that is a mother-daughter story and two brothers. And it's set in a 1980s South Korean reformatory center. And both of the novels will be translated into Korean this year. So I'm really excited.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very excited. So, how was the recent Korean literature event different from past meetups?
Oh, yeah. So I was part of this event that was organized by LTI Korea, the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. And it was really unique because it wanted to celebrate Korean literature across borders. And I think it was the first event of at least that I've been part of where Korean authors from Korea and Korean American authors like myself were put together. So I was on a panel with Sang Park or Park Sang. He wrote Love in the Big City, which did really well both in Korea and abroad. And Sunnan, who wrote A Thousand Blues, which is going to be made, I think, into a film. And we were at a university in California, right outside of LA, called UC San Bernardino. And it was so interesting. Everyone in the audience got a headset, and then there were live translators. So the moderator and Park Sang-young, yeah, and Chun San-nan, they were speaking in Korean, and the translators there were translating it into English for the audience because the audience were all English speakers. And then I would answer the questions in English, and the translators would then translate it in the headset for into Korean so that the moderator and the authors could understand what I was saying. So it was a really bilingual event. It was really cool.
I'm sure the interpreter was very busy. But you brought something.
Yeah, it was hectic.
You brought something really interesting with your Korean American identity because, as we just talked about, I think the scope of how we define Korean literature is now really expanding. So, in terms of your Korean American identity, how does it shape your storytelling when it comes to your writing?
I think my Korean identity so far has shaped everything I've written. And I think it's because I was born here in the United States to Korean immigrants, right? And so in my home, Korean was my first language. Korean food is what we ate every day. Korean culture was really important. But when I was in school, like in elementary school, middle school, it was very different from what it is now. People didn't know much about Korea. I distinctly remember in elementary school a kid being like, "What are you, Chinese or Japanese?" And I said, "I'm Korean." And they were like, "What's that?" You know?
Where is that?
It was just a very different. Yes, where is that? What are you? I think our Korean history and culture were just not valued here. And so there was this strange dissonance between what I was learning at home versus what I was being taught in school. And that's why I wanted to write about Korean history. That's why I wanted to write about a love story set against the Korean War, you know? It's interesting because now Korean culture is very popular, but I still think that our history isn't really well known.
Very true.
Right. So building on that, why do you think there is such a big demand for Korean-inspired stories these days? And has it become easier, do you think, to get those stories published compared to the past?
Well, I would say even 10 years ago, when I was finishing my first novel, If You Leave Me, there were not a lot of Korean American novelists. So my If You Leave Me published in 2018, and when that published, there were two other Korean American writers being published that year. It was Aro Kwan and Nicole Chung. And we three immediately became friends because we were so excited that there were three of us. You know, it was a really different kind of atmosphere. I think even like in the last 10 years, with the rise of Korean culture, with like K-pop Demon Hunters, Hangang's Nobel Prize, BTS, Korean skincare, Korean food, now there is more of an interest in Korean stories. And I think that includes translations of Korean authors as well as people of the diaspora, like Korean Americans. I don't know if it's easier to get published because it's still really hard, but I do think we're being valued more for sure.
All right, we're kind of running low on time, but I just have one more quick question. So for If You Leave Me, like you said, it's a love story. So it felt more intimate, I guess, and more character driven. So was your approach for The Stone Home a bit different? Because it feels more broader in scope.
Yeah, If You Leave Me, it was really like about the characters, and I wanted to like portray this young woman who was surviving the Korean War. The Stone Home was actually inspired by Hyungjae Bokjuan, the Reformatory Center, and it's because when I was in Korea visiting family, ended up interviewing a survivor named Han Jong-san. And speaking with him inspired me to write this story, but it's fictionalized and it's about a mother-daughter and two brothers who are in a center trying to escape.
All right. I mean, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an honor to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So we just heard from the author of The Stone Home about how her Korean American identity shapes her storytelling and how growing global demand is opening new doors for Korean-inspired stories. So turning now to readers here at home, the momentum isn't just global, it's generational as well. So how are younger Koreans driving a new reading trend, Jessica?
So surprisingly, it's the 20s that have the highest rate of reading according to the Ministry of Culture. And there are many ways that our generation are building this kind of momentum. One of the fun ways is definitely through community building, both offline and online. One of the ways that they do it is exchange reading, which I actually did this in college and I would highly recommend it to our viewers. So people would come together and build a community by rotating the book around, and you would write like little annotations and you would get to see the circle of books. And another thing, as you see from the picture, is my book club. So our generation definitely loves to build community through book clubs because it's a way to interact with people. And the one you're seeing right now is called BBC, a brick book club.
I love that name.
Right? It's a great name. Brick book club, and we read thick books, but we get together.
Oh, is that where the brick comes from?
Yes, it's so thick that it can be used as a weapon is what it literally means. But the beauty of it is there's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together, right? So these kind of book clubs are definitely more community building. They're a cultural experience, and they really bring a lot of people together in a time when everything is becoming online. So I think this is one of the ways that our generation sort of value. It's not just about the intellectual experience, it's a communal and cultural experience.
And it's also inspiring people to express themselves through reading. So how's reading becoming a form of self-expression for young people?
Oh, yes. So a lot of people see reading as a way to show who they are and what they value in life. But it's not just about the books they choose. They're trying to show what they love, their taste, through the items they own and use. So like book cover or like a quote notebooks or book rings, such stuff like that. And I actually visited the Seoul International Book Fair last year, and there were so many young people. But it makes sense because there are so many events from like book talks and book author signings, as well as cute merchandise you can buy. So for example, I actually
You brought
yes, I brought the things that I bought. So for example, this one.
This is so
what do you think this is?
So cute.
Yeah, I know, right?
Is that
this
a
is the
bookworm?
yes, it's a
Oh my
bookworm shaped
God.
bookmark.
It's wearing glasses.
I know, it's so cute. And also I bought this Harry Potter bookmark to show that I'm such a big fan of Harry Potter. And not only these physical books, I also like to decorate my Kindle ebook reader with the characters that I love. So yeah, I think self-expression is becoming huge.
Right, and I guess that will make reading a lot of fun as well.
Yes.
So it really shows how reading is really becoming both a lifestyle and also a form of identity. Now beyond individuals, the city itself is also embracing this trend. So how is Seoul reflecting this reading boom?
Yes, so many people might not know this, but there are actually small libraries in some of the metro stations in Seoul. Yeah, you can find machines there where you can check out or drop off the box outside of the business hours. And you can also read some books for free in some lounges in metro stations. Yeah, and then this year, through the Reading Korea campaign, they're planning to run reading programs collaborating with 200 regional bookstores to offer customized reading programs for citizens.
So there are also many different events that are going on as well. So what are some events that people can enjoy around Seoul related to reading?
I'm definitely very excited because the way to read a book is to be both open-minded and open in body.
Well said.
There are places around Gwanghwamun Square and Cheonggyecheon Street where you can literally visit and read. Everything is ready for you. I visited a couple of these places. They're so nice. There's also another place opening near Myeongdong as well, and it's a great way to sort of kind of drift away in the lawn in the city hall. And also there will be a lot of themed pop-up experiences, live music performances, all designed to help people rediscover the joy of reading. Now, over in Yeouido, there's a weekly, quote, reading at the Han River event that has been taking place every Saturday since April 11th. So if you have a book, whatever book you have, grab it and go outside and enjoy the reading from the outdoor experience.
Right. So as you've seen today, reading is no longer just a solitary habit. It's becoming a shared and also very evolving culture. From global interest in Korean literature to changing reading trends at home, the way we engage with books is clearly transforming. And maybe all it takes is just opening that first page. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Chuyoung.
Great to be here.
And also Cheska.
This is always mine, thank
For
you.
joining us today. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And hopefully your next break isn't spent scrolling, but turning the pages. We are
News Generation.